The walls that never forget. Before we begin, do yourself a favor. Lock in. Hit subscribe. Like the video. Drop a comment if you've got the nerve. Because once these gates close behind you, there's no turning back. The sirens cut through the Kansas night like a blade. Red and blue lights washed over the limestone walls of a United States penitentiary, Leavenworth, a fortress that had stood since the 1890s, watching generations of men arrive in chains and leave in silence. Just before midnight, a prison transport van skidded to a stop near the Sally Port. Guards poured out, hands already on their weapons, eyes scanning the yard. Inside the van was a body. Inmate Samuel Crowe, Federal Register number 11247-031, had been pronounced dead less than 15 minutes earlier. Officially, it was being labeled a suicide. Unofficially, nobody believed that for a second. Crowe wasn't supposed to die. Not yet. His wrist was still cuffed when they pulled him out. His prison jumpsuit was soaked at the collar, dark and stiff. A thin line circled his neck, not quite rope burn, not quite wire. And tucked into his pocket was a folded scrap of paper, damp with sweat. It read, "The walls are listening." By sunrise, Leavenworth was sealed tighter than it had been in decades. The prison, known to inmates as the Big House, had a reputation that stretched far beyond Kansas. Al Capone had walked its corridors. Machine Gun Kelly had stared at its ceilings. Leavenworth wasn't just a prison. It was a warning carved in stone. And now, something had gone wrong inside it. Special Agent Daniel Mercer arrived just after dawn. Mid-40s, graying at the temples, eyes that never stopped moving. He'd been with the Bureau long enough to know that when a federal prison called in outside investigators, it meant the situation was already out of control. Warden Helen Cross met him at the gate. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. 3 deaths in 11 months, she said as they walked. All ruled natural or self-inflicted. All in the same housing unit. Mercer stopped walking. "Then why am I here now?" Cross glanced at the towering cell blocks ahead. Because Crowe was scheduled to testify next week. That changed everything. Samuel Crowe wasn't just another inmate. He was a former corrections officer turned whistleblower, convicted on a reduced charge after exposing a smuggling operation that ran through multiple federal facilities. Drugs, phones, favors, names that reached higher than anyone wanted to admit. And now he was dead. They entered Cell House D, where Crowe had been housed. The air smelled of disinfectant and old concrete. Inmates stood silently behind bars, eyes tracking Mercer as he passed. No shouting, no taunts. That silence was worse than noise. Who found him? Mercer asked. His cellmate, Cross replied. Inmate Louis Navarro. Life sentence. Aryan Brotherhood associate, officially inactive. Mercer raised an eyebrow. You put a protected witness in a cell with a gang affiliate. Cross's jaw tightened. Crowe requested the transfer. That didn't sit right. Crowe's cell was small, even by Leavenworth standards. Steel bed, steel toilet, no camera inside, just one in the corridor outside. The mattress had been stripped. The vent above the bed showed fresh scratches. Mercer leaned closer. "Wire?" he asked. "Forensics think so," Cross said. "Thin gauge, possibly electrical." Mercer straightened. "That's not suicide." "No," Cross agreed. "It's a message." Navarro was brought in for questioning an hour later. Shackled. Calm. Too calm. He didn't deny being there when Crowe died. "I woke up. He was standing on the bed," Navarro said, voice steady. Said he couldn't do it anymore. Said the prison was alive. Mercer watched him closely. "Alive how?" Navarro smiled, just slightly, like it remembers everything. That smile was logged in Mercer's notes. As the day wore on, more cracks appeared. The camera outside Crowe's cell had glitched for exactly 4 minutes during the estimated time of death. Maintenance logs showed no issues. Digital records showed a manual override. Someone had turned it off. By late afternoon, Mercer requested Crowe's case file. What he found made his stomach tighten. Crowe had been writing letters. Not to lawyers. Not to family. To the Office of the Inspector General. In them, he claimed Leavenworth was running an internal economy controlled by inmates but protected by staff. He named a group he called the Stone Council. Mercer had never heard of it. According to Crow, the Stone Council wasn't a gang in the traditional sense. No tattoos, no colors, just influence. They decided who got protection, who got transferred, who disappeared into solitary until their minds broke. And Crow claimed he had proof. The proof was supposed to be hidden somewhere inside the prison. That night, a lockdown was announced. Every cell sealed. No movement. No explanation. In Cell House D, Navarro lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. 2 guards stopped outside his cell longer than necessary. One leaned close to the bars. "Should have kept your mouth shut," the guard muttered. Navarro said nothing. But when the guards walked away, he reached under his mattress and pulled out a second scrap of paper. It read, "Basement, old laundry." At 2:17 a.m., an alarm tripped near the prison's decommissioned laundry wing, a section built before World War I and sealed off decades earlier. Mercer was dragged out of a restless half-sleep and rushed there. The door was padlocked. Dust covered the floor. No signs it had been opened in years. Except the lock was warm. They cut it open. The smell hit first. Mold, rust, something metallic. Flashlights swept the room, catching on old pipes, broken machines, and finally, a wall that didn't match the rest. Newer concrete, polydone. Mercer stepped closer, heart pounding. "Get me a jackhammer," he said. As the first chunk of concrete broke away, something dark seeped through the cracks. Blood. And behind the wall, tightly wrapped in plastic and prison-issued sheets, were 3 bodies, all former inmates, all officially listed as transferred, and carved into the wall above them, barely visible beneath layers of grime, were 4 words that stopped Mercer cold. "The walls are listening." The prison lights flickered, and somewhere deep inside Leavenworth, a door slammed shut. By morning, the bodies were gone. Officially, they'd never been there. The decommissioned laundry wing was scrubbed clean before sunrise, concrete dust vacuumed, blood chemically erased, the wall resealed with a speed that made Agent Daniel Mercer's skin crawl. When he returned with a full forensic team, escorted by 2 Department of Justice observers, the room looked like a forgotten storage space again. No smell, no stains, no evidence of violence. Only Mercer remembered what he'd seen. 3 men, wrapped, discarded, erased, and the words carved into the stone, still echoing in his head. "The walls are listening." Warden Helen Cross denied everything. "There were no bodies," she said in her office, hands folded, voice level. "You were exhausted. The alarm was a malfunction. The area has been sealed for decades." Mercer leaned forward, then explained the missing inmates. Cross slid a folder across the desk. Transfer orders, dates, signatures, every document flawless. Too flawless. "People don't just vanish from federal custody," Mercer said quietly. Cross met his stare. "In this place, Agent Mercer, people disappear all the time. Just not on paper." Word spread through the prison faster than any official memo ever could. The inmates felt it before the guards did. Doors slammed harder. Meals went untouched. The silence returned, thicker than before. Someone had broken a rule that mattered. Mercer requested immediate protective custody for Luis Navarro. He was too late. Navarro was found unresponsive in his cell during morning count. No visible injuries. No struggle. The coroner would later say cardiac arrest, stress-induced. But Mercer noticed a detail no one else wanted to talk about. Navarro's lips were stained blue. Prison-made toxin. Slow. Hard to detect. Popular in older facilities where chemistry knowledge was currency. Navarro hadn't been silenced for what he'd done. He'd been silenced for what he knew. With 2 dead witnesses and a warden stonewalling him, Mercer turned to the only person he trusted inside Leavenworth, Evelyn Shaw. She was a civilian archivist, mid-30s, responsible for digitizing Leavenworth's historical records. Officially, her job was paperwork. Unofficially, she knew where the skeletons were buried. Sometimes literally. They met in the archive room, a windowless maze of filing cabinets and humming servers beneath the prison's administrative wing. "You weren't supposed to see the laundry wing," Shaw said, barely moving her lips. "You know about it," Mercer replied. She nodded once. "Everyone who's worked here long enough does." She pulled up an old blueprint on her screen. The original prison design extended far beyond what was currently in use. Tunnel storage chambers, holding rooms never documented in modern schematics. Leavenworth wasn't just built to house inmates, Shaw said. It was built to control them. She zoomed in on a section labeled simply Sublevel C. This is where it started. According to Shaw, Sublevel C had been used during the early 1900s for unofficial punishment, isolation beyond solitary. Inmates who caused problems but couldn't be publicly disciplined were taken below. Some never came back. Over time, it evolved, Shaw said. Different names, different methods, same purpose. Mercer's jaw tightened. The Stone Council. Shaw hesitated. That name doesn't appear anywhere official, she said. But I've seen patterns. Inmate transfers authorized without justification. Guard promoted despite disciplinary records. Deaths ruled accidental with identical language in the reports. She pulled up a list. Every incident traced back to the same oversight committee. 3 administrators, 2 senior corrections officers, 1 external contractor. One of those names made Mercer sit back in his chair. Deputy Warden Thomas Rourke. Rourke had been with Leavenworth for 28 years. Decorated, untouchable, a man who spoke about order like it was a religion. Mercer requested to interview him. Rourke smiled the entire time. "You have to understand," Rourke said, hands folded on the table. "This prison houses the worst of the worst. Men who would burn the world if given the chance. Order here isn't pretty. Is murder part of that order?" Mercer asked. Rourke chuckled softly. "Careful, Agent. Accusations like that have consequences." That wasn't a denial. That night, Mercer received an anonymous message on a burner phone he hadn't shared with anyone. "You're looking in the wrong direction." Attached was a photo. Evelyn Shaw, leaving the archives. Timestamp an hour earlier. Mercer's blood went cold. He rushed back to the archive room. The door was ajar. Files scattered. A chair overturned. Shaw's computer screen still glowed. On it was a scanned document from 1974, an internal memo marked eyes only. It described the formal creation of a stabilization committee to handle inmates deemed disruptive beyond rehabilitation. The final line was underlined in red ink. Permanent solutions require permanent silence. Shaw's phone was on the floor, cracked. One last unsent text draft blinked on the screen. "Basement tunnels aren't sealed. They are active." Mercer didn't wait for authorization. He followed the old blueprints to a service corridor behind the chapel, a place guards rarely patrolled out of superstition more than policy. Behind a maintenance door marked electrical, he found a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. The air grew colder with every step. Below, the tunnel opened into a long corridor lit by bare bulbs. Footprints marked the dust. Recent ones. Voices echoed ahead. Mercer moved closer, heart pounding, weapon drawn. He reached a junction just as a door slammed shut down the hall. Inside the room beyond, he found Evelyn Shaw, alive, shackled to a chair. Across from her stood Deputy Warden Rourke. "You should have stayed out of history," Rourke said calmly. "This place survived because we make hard choices." Mercer stepped into the doorway. "Let her go." Rourke turned, unsurprised. "Agent Mercer, I was hoping you'd come down here." He gestured to the walls. "These stones have kept America safe for over a century. Men like you see monsters. I see necessity." Before Mercer could respond, the lights went out. In the darkness, a voice echoed from behind him. "You really thought he was the one in charge." And the door slammed shut, locking Mercer inside the tunnels of Leavenworth as footsteps closed in from both directions. The darkness didn't feel empty. It pressed in, heavy and breathing, as if the prison itself were aware of who stood inside its veins. The emergency lights flickered on one by one, bathing the tunnel in a sickly amber glow. Daniel Mercer raised his weapon, turning slowly, counting footsteps that echoed from both ends of the corridor. Rourke was gone. Evelyn Shaw was still shackled to the chair, her eyes wide but focused. She wasn't panicking. That frightened Mercer more than screaming would have. "They're not guards," she said quietly. "Not officially." From the left tunnel, 3 men emerged. No uniforms, plain gray coveralls. Their faces were familiar in the unsettling way you recognize someone from the corner of your eye but never remember meeting. Institutional ghosts. Men who move like they belong to the walls. "The Stone Council," Mercer said. One of them smiled. "We don't call ourselves that." "Then what do you call yourselves?" Mercer asked. "Necessary." The man closest to him gestured casually, and Mercer felt the sting before he heard the sound. Something hard struck the back of his head. The world tilted, then collapsed. When Mercer came to, he was on his knees. The tunnel had opened into a larger chamber, circular, with thick stone columns and old iron rings embedded in the walls. This place hadn't been used in decades, yet it felt prepared, maintained, waiting. Rourke stood at the center, hands clasped behind his back. "You see now," Rourke said. "Leavenworth doesn't rot. It adapts." Mercer spat blood onto the floor. "You murdered inmates. You murdered witnesses." Rourke nodded once. "We removed destabilizing elements." Crow wasn't a whistleblower. He was leverage. And leverage is dangerous in the wrong hands. Evelyn was dragged forward and thrown beside Mercer. "She found the archives," Rourke continued. "You found the bodies. Both of you cross a line that has existed longer than this prison's electric grid." Mercer looked up. "You think this stays buried?" Rourke smiled, thin and tired. "It already has. For over 100 years." A guard stepped forward holding a familiar object, the scrap of paper. "The walls are listening." That phrase, Rourke said, wasn't a warning. It was a rule. He nodded, and one of the men raised a syringe. That was when the explosion rocked the tunnel. Stone dust rained from the ceiling. Alarms screamed to life. Shouts echoed from distant corridors. The chamber lights flickered violently. Rourke's smile vanished. From the tunnel entrance, figures in tactical gear poured in, weapons raised, shouting federal commands. U.S. Marshals. DOJ Internal Affairs. Someone had listened after all. In the chaos, Mercer lunged, slamming his shoulder into Rourke. They crashed to the floor as bullets cracked into stone. Rourke fought hard, desperate, but age and certainty had dulled him. Mercer's cuff snapped shut around Rourke's wrist just as marshals dragged the others down. Evelyn was freed moments later, shaking but alive. As Rourke was hauled away, he leaned close to Mercer, his voice barely audible over the alarms. "You think this ends with me?" he whispered. "I'm just a caretaker." The arrest made headlines. For 3 weeks, America watched as Leavenworth became the center of a federal reckoning. Investigations revealed decades of covert executions, falsified records, and an internal power structure that had quietly decided who deserved to live. Rourke pled not guilty. So did everyone else. Some guards resigned. Others vanished before subpoenas could find them. Files went missing. Hard drives failed. Witnesses recanted. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the story faded. Leavenworth remained open, renovated, rebranded, reassured. Mercer stood outside the prison one final time, watching the gates close behind another transport van. Evelyn Shaw had entered protective custody. Her testimony sealed several convictions, but not all. Too many names led nowhere. Too many signatures ended at dead ends. As Mercer turned to leave, his phone vibrated. No number, just a message. Sublevel C is sealed again. Attached was a photo, a fresh concrete wall, and carved into it, still wet with dust, were the same 4 words. The walls are listening. 3 months later, an inmate at a different federal facility was found dead in his cell. Official cause, suicide. No camera footage. No witnesses. In his pocket was a scrap of paper. Same handwriting. Same message. They said the Stone Council was dismantled. They said the system was fixed. But prisons don't forget. They remember. And somewhere behind those walls, something ancient, patient, and very human is still deciding who disappears next. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for what's coming next. Make sure you're subscribed, because the walls are still listening.